Welcome back, everybody, once again to Hearthstone Grandmasters. You're just in time for the first match of the day here for Asia Pacific before, of course, we send you over to Europe and Americas later. And Gia, it is going to be a very good one throughout all parts of today because we are taking a look at all of the Division A matches, which supposedly should lead to a slightly higher level of play. Which I am looking forward to. It's exciting to see the moments where players are losing their cool in the high pressure situations, but I also want to see some very high level play here today.
Sure. I am particularly looking forward to Flurry's play. Although he's not bringing Hunter anymore this week, I was really impressed with how he piloted Highlander Hunter versus Face Hunter last week and got Mage, something a little bit different, but there is, of course, some level of decisions to be made outside of when to play the box. And as for Posesi, I think he's consistently been one of our most polished players. Just a couple tiny errors. I remember the use of a Moonfire when it didn't
Oh,
need to be.
yes.
But if that's the biggest thing I can call Posesi out for, then I think he's been playing really well.
Yeah, Posesi has been such a fantastic addition to Hearthstone Grandmasters. Obviously, you may not remember the match that qualified, or this tournament run that qualified him through to the Grandmasters. It was basically all the way back in Masters Tour Las Vegas, the first one that we had way back at the start of last year, where he managed to get a very, very strong performance, finishing fourth, I believe, to Tom60229's third. So another kind of weird grudge match that we have here in Hearthstone Grandmasters APAC. But he has just been playing so well, so consistently. And I think he's been a great addition in terms of practice partners to the Japanese team overall.
Yeah, and I think that Posesi's addition as a new GM really sets a parallel between him and Flurry because Flurry was one of the original invites to Grandmasters based off of, I think, the criteria for Flurry in particular was community contribution, but he could have
Right.
easily made it in through prize earnings and just competitive achievements as well, because he is one of the OGs of the Korean scene in Hearthstone, has a huge stream, a big following, and I think that really sets him at odds with Posesi, who probably if you are um, just coming back into Hearthstone, you might not be familiar with that name.
Yeah, I mean, before I'd seen him perform very well at Masters Tour Las Vegas, I think I'd heard of him, but I hadn't really seen him perform all too much on the big stage. But he seems to be very much keeping his cool here, which again is just so far and away the most important aspect after the fundamentals here in Asia Pacific. But for Flurry, with the Warrior band away, we are of course left with the Rogue, the Demon Hunter, and the Mage. Overall, not a very common lineup, given that most people are going for the Zoo and the Demon Hunter. Are you partial to a slightly less aggressive lineup like Flurry has here, Gia?
I would struggle to say that it's the right call for this week. Just bringing Rogue after it performed so badly last week seems like it's just asking to be targeted. Maybe a surge in Hunter brings, Face Hunter and Dragon Hunter in particular. The Mage is always a wild card to me because I feel that players that really stick to bringing Mage every week seem to feel favored in matchups where I feel it's unfavored. So I am not going to knock Flurry for that one.
And weirdly enough, Gia, I kind of don't hate the inclusion of Rogue this week. It's the same tactic I take to rock, paper, scissors, because this is a little pro trick here. Nobody ever expects you to do the same thing twice. Unbeatable strategy. Rock, give them a rock again, and they'll hit you with the scissors. And Rogue here, even though I am memeing slightly, I think the players were expecting it to go down a lot, so they're not going to bring quite so many of the counters. It didn't quite work out that way, but it wasn't. I don't think it's disastrous this week at all, because as you can see here from Posesi, we're seeing a lot of Zoo. I don't think that's that bad of a matchup. The statistics that we showed at the start of the day didn't necessarily reflect that. But if you look at overall a large game sample size, I think it ends up much closer around the 50% mark.
Yep, from Posesi here, we're seeing that the Zoo is not really the Zoo that we're used to seeing. It's got the Dark Pharaoh to Khan, which of course means you're playing a heavier Lackey package, including Sinister Deal for Posesi's list, which I am not entirely sold whether that will hurt him more than it helps him. But the cut of Serpent Egg from Zoo is something I can definitely get behind because it feels like you need very specific cards to actually proc the egg itself. And for Flurry's Rogue, I do think that if you're bringing Rogue, Highlander is the way to go about it. So I will give that one to Flurry.
You think that Highlander is the way to go about it?
Right. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
he's not actually
he's got
bringing...
non-Highlander Rogue. Yeah,
Right,
just
right.
the
My bad.
straight up regular version. This is what I'm saying. He's just going with Rock again, hoping that his opponents go with the scissors. But based on the fact that there's Druid again from Posesi and a whole bunch of the players here in APAC, maybe it hasn't worked out quite so well as he would like. But I like the point you bring up about the Dark Ferret's Khan in Zoo, because even though I love the idea behind it and I love seeing spicy new inclusions from our GMs, I'm starting to come around to the idea that there are just so many different ways to do it and so many powerful ways to do it. We saw Hypno, a player who also performed very well at Masters Tour Las Vegas, but didn't quite make it into Grandmasters last year. Is got a version of the deck that runs all 6 Orc Merchants with the Ethereal and Goblin, as well as Guardian Orc Merchant, which is very, very cool list. And he's cut a whole bunch of these seemingly core cards. And so basically the point I'm trying to make is I think there's a lot of different ways you can go about Zoo, and I'm not sure Posesi has hit it quite on the nose here. But one thing that Posesi does know, Gia, he is good with.
For sure. The Japanese players have stuck to this deck every single week, and I think in large part due to just the overall power level when you hit these exact shots on the fortune. It's just looking for a bit of ramp, that they're also including a one of Wild Growth in the list, where you might not necessarily see it from other players, to actually smooth out that perfect curve of those 3 cards together.
Posesi just ripping the Fungal Fortunes here, knowing that he can go for a Moonfire off the top if he draws it. The classic Posesi move.
Right? Or this Innervate if you like. Gonna hold on to it to make sure that Glowfly not as earlier concern. I think it's very disciplined. The card off the top probably doesn't matter as much as being able to play down the threats before Reno comes online and the Blizzard.
Should have just played it. Missed the hero power Gia there on that last turn. Should have just got another Innervate. But in all seriousness, I like this a lot. I think in this particular matchup, because of the builds, Posesi has to play aggressive. He cannot go super into the late game, because in this particular matchup, I think it's a very, very real threat that Mage can completely run Posesi out of threats.
Indeed. As for Flurry, though, this is the problem turn. He doesn't have any AoE available. He can, of course, trade down one of the Glowflies. It's just a question of whether he wants to armor up with the Ice Barrier or play the Twilight Drake. He's already respecting lethal possibilities from Posesi. We've seen, I think, one too many turn 5 lethals from Power of the Wild and Savage Roar for my liking.
Yeah, I mean, it would have just literally been Savage Roar and GG at that point. This, of course, also does, taking a look at the list, bluff Flame Ward, which is a pretty big part of the play. And all of a sudden, Posesi is thinking, why would you play a secret there if it's not Flame Ward? Surely this can't be an Ice Barrier. And the decisions multiply.
Well, there is a reason. You just brought it up. The Ice Barrier actually puts Flurry at 38 health, which is well beyond the Savage Roar plus Power of the Wild combo, which would be 30 from the minions and then 2 from the hero power. Although it seems scary to, it seems like an overreaction to play around that specific 2 card combo. I feel like you can't have a hard read on Flame Ward because just the secret seems better than certain minions in this spot as well.
Fair enough. And he is rewarded, I suppose, by going for the attack. I think he kind of had to here with another Glowfly in hand. You got to start moving quickly. Like I said, play aggressively. I like this attack a lot.
It was a very tough decision, though, because Posesi could have gone for, say, Soul of the Forest. And then if it was Flame Ward, then he has Insurance. But that does just walk into a Reno from the other side from Flurry or Blizzard. Yeah. So I definitely prefer this line.
With this line, if we see Blizzard into Reno, of course a Soul of the Forest beforehand can disrupt that.
Right.
So it does make it very difficult actually for Flurry to get a guaranteed easy board clear over the next couple of turns, especially given that he's not running Flame Strike in his list. So even if he had Coin Dragoncaster, there's no Flame Strike to go alongside it.
But he has just drawn this Ancient Mysteries, can get him the Flame Ward if he likes. But that would be, of course, weak to the other Power of the Wild. He is just going to go for what he hopes to be a guaranteed 2-turn clear.
Well, I think Posesi can definitely guess what the most likely card on the following turn is in an easy-peasy Reno the Relicologist, and therefore the best play around that is just an easy Soul of the Forest. It's a very simple choice here, but just the very succinct and deliberate positioning and timing of these threats has put Posesi in such a good spot.
It really has. He had a small option to maybe draw a card instead of summoning an eagle there, but I think he's definitely setting up for overflow next turn if the Savage Roar doesn't immediately close off the game.
I wonder.
But for Flurry, I'm not really seeing a way out of this. He could go for the Flame Ward this turn, actually, which
keeps
means
him alive.
Yes. It would mean that Posesi's only able to attack with the first layer of minions, and only one of them gets damage through. And then the second layer doesn't immediately have the ability to attack. Whereas Reno would have given essentially the Treant's charge.
Exactly.
Time runs out on me.
I think this is very smart timing from Flurry to go for the Flame Ward this turn as opposed to last.
Do we think it's smart to go for Twilight Drake though? I don't really see the benefit of playing that out here, to be honest.
I'm not sure either, because Flurry Posesi 100% knows that it is Flame Ward.
I guess the thinking is it will allow him to trade in if Posesi doesn't want to attack at all, and then that makes the board a little bit more vulnerable to Reno the Relicologist.
Sure.
And I guess he's probably not going to have mana in the next few turns anyway, so it's not disastrous at all.
Yeah. It actually works out perfectly for Flurry if he sees Posesi trade without playing any additional cards. So if you see a 4-1 and a 3-2 go in, or 3-1, then that leaves 2 2/2s, which immediately die to the Flame Ward, and then there are 5 2/2s remaining.
Yeah, perfect.
But Posesi is not going to make things so easy for Flurry.
If he goes Savage Roar here, he can hit
Time waits for no one.
6, 18, 21 damage?
Yes, I think so. But at that point, I think he'd much rather just go for the overflow.
Right.
It's interesting that he did not choose to trade off a Treant or a minion there to kill the Twilight Drake. He says he wants the max amount of Treants on board. Which, if you're thinking about Reno, then he would have, in theory, 4 less health on board, and it would still be resilient to Reno. So I'm not sure if I'm on board with leaving up the Twilight Drake for the upside of keeping 2 more Treants.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Well, you can see this line is clearly going to be very vulnerable to a rolling fireball here. Can take out 4 of the Treants straight up.
Yes,
and I think that's got to be the line. Reno the Relicologist is just too unreliable here, and you've got to start clearing stuff off the board.
Yeah, I like the look of that. He can also ping off and trade into the Eagle. That removes only 2 damage from the board, but leaving only 3 minions. Actually, that is still lethal to Savage Roar, isn't it? Yeah, with the hero power.
That is just lethal to Savage Roar, exactly, yep.
Yeah, just one of them even. And Posesi's got 2 with the power of the wild. Doesn't even need to make sure he's double checking his math. Just play all of them.
Yep,
That
is
crazy.
That is crazy. I was gearing up for a really long game there where Posesi was going to have to milk all the value. But I think overall, as I was saying at the start, his aggressive game plan, holding on to the Innovate and burning a card just to get that Glowfly down before a Blizzard could come down from his opponent, just meant that at every step of the game, Flurry was just 1 turn away from having the perfect answer.
Right. Aside from, I think, a pretty straightforward not using the Innervate at the beginning, I think the key turn was the decision to not actually trade into the Twilight Drake, which at the time I was thinking looked really fishy, because I was thinking it's punishable by freeze to keep yourself board locked by that. But that specific decision from Posesi made it so that if Flurry were to go for some board clear, he would still actually have enough minions left on board to be able to lethal with Savage Roar. So that pan out in particular rewarded Posesi's line.
It did as well, and he's doing a great job with the heavier list, the lighter list, whatever he needs. Posesi can get the job done against the slower decks in particular, because I feel like that's kind of the harder of the matchups. The aggressive decks, you're just kind of playing out everything as quick as you can, but that one is about making sure your threats are well-timed, which, like you said, absolutely Posesi did. So he's 1-0 up now with the Druid out of the way, in my opinion. one of the weaker decks at the moment, so he's in a great spot heading into the rest of this series up against Flurry, which will continue after this.
That's insane! Boston just has the flick in hand! Goodness gracious, Eddie. Not happy to see that.
What was his draw? Twin slice?
Oh my goodness. Oh my double goodness. We have a new member in the Hall of Champions.
That is the most insane thing I've ever seen happen in Hearthstone. You're watching Hearthstone Grandmasters here on the Hearthstone or Hearthstone Esports YouTube page. So if you're enjoying it, make sure to hit subscribe so that you are always notified when we go live with more Grandmasters every weekend for the next 4 weeks, including this week, as we are on week 5 out of 8. But right now, Gia, we are on game 1 out of 5 for today. Posesi up against Flurry, and it is a matchup not only against two of the better players that we've had so far in GM, but also the two dominant countries, once again, in Japan and South Korea.
Yes, definitely. Posesi's got a lot to prove as one of the flag bearers. And Japan as a region, I find very interesting in APAC because they didn't get their own client until I think later on in Hearthstone's lifespan, around 2015 or so. So they actually are a relatively newer community, and yet they are so dominant here in APAC. I think it is incredibly impressive. Not to mention, one of the 3 GMs was able to make it through the circuit itself, not an invite or an automatic inclusion based off of points from the previous system, but just grinding the Masters Tour system and having the consistent results to get Posesi to this point.
Yeah, for all of the players, Alutemu in particular, I feel is a player who, for a long time, a lot of the pro players that we're more familiar with in the Western world were talking about how Alutemu, or Machamp as he was known back in the day before he changed his tag, was low-key one of the best players in competitive Hearthstone at the moment, at the very least in Asia Pacific. And he has absolutely proven that, as has now Posesi. And moving on to the Demon Hunter here, a very standard deck at the moment. But up against Rogue from Flurry here, it's a matchup that I've just gone back and forth on Gia. I'm still mostly of the opinion that I like Demon Hunter in this matchup, but I'm hearing a lot of differing opinions.
I would also be on that side of the fence, pro Demon Hunter in the matchup. I do think that Highlander Rogue has a little bit more game against Demon Hunter, but I would still say that no matter what archetype, Demon Hunter is the edge, because although Rogue has tools like, you can see right here, Backstab to deal with the early minions, notably Satyr Overseer being the big one. I think that, wow, that is an insane draw for Posesi because he's already got the Twin Slice in hand. I was going to say that the lack of healing from Rogue this expansion really hurts it, because at some point, even if they're able to clear the board, by that time they've usually taken maybe 10 to 15 damage, and Demon Hunter can just finish the job with weapons and Metamorphosis.
So how does the Rogue win? The way you're describing it makes it sound unwinnable.
Definitely not unwinnable, but I don't think it is enough for Rogue to simply clear Demon Hunter's early minions. They need to make their own board push. Big factor for that is Faceless Corruptor that you can see here for Flurry. So if he's able to actually take trades in such a way that the Corruptors clear Posesi's board and also survive and start racing against Posesi, I think that's Flurry's key to victory. Trail here presents an interesting option, allows him to take out the minions on either side. Of course, the Shadow Weaver needs a dagger charge as well.
Yeah, the Deadly Poison is somewhat interesting as well, given that, of course, you can just use it to take out the Shadow Weaver and have another charge for next turn. So it kind of does a similar thing to Betrayal for a little bit cheaper, but you're taking a lot more damage in the process, which, like you said, the lack of healing is something you absolutely have to consider in this matchup.
I do like Flurry's pick to go for immediate removal. These are not very great options, though. I think Clever Disguise is probably one that Flurry would even theoretically have the time to play, but anything that is value-oriented in this matchup generally just gets stuck in the hand.
Yeah, I mean, you're mainly looking to get it for a Vendetta activator, which he could, of course, get off the other Ethereal Lackey here.
Alright. Love the ambition.
Oh, but
That's
Backstab.
a premium one, though.
That
Now
is the
that
card
means
he is looking for.
That is a full clear as early as now, and he has the board. This is a situation we're talking about where Rogue swings. It's not a whole lot of pressure for racing, but Posesi's hand is just not doing anything until, or unless, the Crimson Sigil runner drop premium.
Yeah, for now, still a 2-1, but come May 18th, I think it was, just a couple days' time, Crimson Sigil runner. It's going to be a measly 1-1. Not sure if it will even find a spot. But in this game, Gia, this is still looking remarkably close to me. Flurry, I think, is going to be able to lock down the board for most of the rest of the game, unless the Warglaves can go completely crazy here. But the main thing is just he's only on 19 health, which may sound like a safe health total. It is not versus Demon Hunter.
Definitely is not, especially since Posesi's got the Warglaves into Glavebound Adept over the next few turns. However, we can see already that Flurry will definitely be able to stick at least one minion this turn for Faceless Corruptor. I think he'll even have two, because the I-Beam doesn't seem to have a very good target here. So we're already able to break this down into a mathematical race, and I couldn't do the math quickly enough, but essentially Flurry will be able to deal he'll be able to put 9 damage on board that can already attack next turn, and then he'll have his dagger. He can also play the other Corruptor at some point.
Right.
So I think that's a 2 to 3 turn clock for Posesi, and judging by the Glavebound Warglaves, it also looks like a 2 to 3 turn clock.
It's going to be a very, very close one. But here for Flurry, Gia, do you ever trade the Miscreant and then corrupt the Miscreant instead of the Lackey because you want to play Togwaggle on the following turns? Or is that way too obvious? Does this just say you have to kill the Lackey on this turn?
It is obvious, but I don't think it comes at no cost for Posesi to kill off the Lackey. If he wants to play Warglaves, then he would much rather be sending all of that damage into bigger minions, and more importantly, the face, instead of a 1-1 Lackey. I think this opens up the option for Flurry to go for Togwaggle if it sticks, and even if it doesn't, he can just put down the other Faceless Corruptor and put the pressure on Posesi.
This is a smart play from Flurry, because he obviously knows that the second slice is there, which would open up hypothetically, the second slice plus Glaive-bound Adept to take out 2 of them. But even if that happens, he just trades in the other Faceless Corruptor, and he's still in a very good spot.
Indeed. And we're hitting this dilemma that we just discussed a while ago. Is Posesi gonna sink 4 damage into this Lackey just to prevent Hogwaggle on curve?
He does have the second Warglaive, so it's not like he's going to run out of charges. But does he want to cast them next turn?
That is the question. I think that, well, he's just told us that he would much rather be going for Glaive-bound Adept next turn. Flurry with the Galakron in hand also will have some armor gain if he really needs it.
Oh, yes. And this is such an interesting point, because very often when you're leaving lackeys up, you're saying, I hope they don't have Togwaggle. Here, Posesi had almost guaranteed information that it was in hand, given that the Miscreant was transformed instead of the lackey, and still said it's not worth killing it off.
That is a very good point. But now he's got to pivot a little bit, because the 5 health on the Togwaggle makes things very, very awkward for him. There is a line where he attacks the Warglaives into the Lackey, and then the Hero Power plus Glaive-bound is able to deal with Togwaggle. But that is a lot of damage sinking into minions. I think he would much rather find a way to maximize face damage while still clearing off Togwaggle. Problem is with I-Beam, he's still got to sink in the first charge of the Glaive-bound. Setting up for a more powerful swing on the next turn is Posesi.
Time grows short.
So we could just see here a I-Beam on the Togwaggle while you can, and then Twin Slice to take out both the minions? That doesn't sound very good, though. This is really hard.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him... Okay, I was gonna say taking out the Tog and just saving the Twin Slice, because I think the Lackey has passed its threatening position already. The Tog has been played.
Yeah.
Lackey is just a Lackey. But Posesi is just gonna say, you can't deal that much damage to me from hand without Leroy. So he's just gonna try and find a big swing for next turn.
But now it's another tough spot for Posesi, where he needs to say, do I take the more powerful turn of Wand to set up for a stronger play next turn, or do I need the 5 armor now, lest I just die? A Skull of Gul'dan was just played, yeah.
Yeah, it is extremely scary. Metamorphosis plus Glaive-bound and Twin Slice. There's many combinations, but they are rather specific, I think, especially only on 7 mana for Posesi. So Flurry says, I'm gonna edge it a little bit more.
It is scary, to say the least. But now, 2 Galakron invokes mean that we are a level 2 Galakron instead of just 1 card. So that's already more longevity, more chance to find that pressure for Flurry to close out the game.
Oh, Eviscerate. He's got 2 in hand. That is
He's
very
got lethal
close to
next
lethal.
turn now.
Yeah. You can see Posesi has some amount of healing. But is it enough to save off everything?
Another skull.
Oh, he surely can't go for it this turn. He's got to respect the board now. I think he can put Flurry on having maybe a burst. There is 1 natural Eviscerate in the deck and a lot of discovered cards. So Posesi's got to remove most of the damage on board.
He does, and that's why my thinking was, if he's in so bad of a spot, does he have to go for Skull to hit Altruis? I don't think he's in that bad of a spot, taking a closer look at it with the double I-Beam available and the freeze, even if he needs it. But he really doesn't want to play the freeze here if it's at all possible to avoid it.
Agreed. I think I'm still looking at just some measure of I-Beams and Warglaives. With the 6 healing puts him out of range of a single Eviscerate.
And just about out of range of 2 as well, as it just so happens.
But I'm looking at this Miscreant and a Kobold Lackey.
Oh. A single Kobold is lethal. A Goblin Lackey is actually lethal.
Yes, because he still has the dagger. A Praise Galakron gives him another shot at a Lackey and additional damage. I think that is the card to start the turn.
That's just lethal. With the dagger, that's 10 damage plus the 5 on board. That's just game.
Oh my gosh! It really is. It'll be 7 with the dagger and then 8 from hand from the eviscerates. Posesi was really not expecting this, and you know what? I can't blame him.
Whoa, this is a look at the rogue that we have been missing, Gia. What went wrong all those weeks where it was just dying to aggro? You give it a little bit of time, and it will truly deliver. I think this was a fantastically played game on both sides. I really liked a lot of the lines the players went for. Flurry, like you said, taking the betrayal there and looking for the backstep, shadow stepping his lackey in order to find it, to clear the board 100%. He found it. He got a good setup for the Corruptor on the following turn. But then on the other side, Posesi as well, just going so aggressive as soon as he lost the board. I think was great recognition from him as well.
Yeah, it's not often that Demon Hunter already has to play from the back foot around turn 3, turn 4 from Rogue.
Yeah.
And Flurry had the Corruptor to capitalize on the board pressure, because sometimes Rogue has that hand where, okay, I have the board, but it's a bunch of one-attack minions. Demon Hunter's probably still going to kill me first. And Flurry also managed to find that crucial extra piece of burst, and that really did remind me, as you said, of the old days of Rogue. It's not quite a Leroy, but it is approaching why Rogue was so feared back in the day, and why you couldn't just, similar to Demon Hunter, deal with their stuff. You would have to worry about burst from hand as well.
That's exactly right. It really does come down for me though, Gia. That game, Posesi has to be thinking, was I supposed to kill the lackey? Again, with the way that Flurry was playing, he had 100% information, pretty much, if you want to make that read, that the Togwaggle was in hand. Should he have killed it off, or do you still like his choice?
I think that the way his hand was shaped, I still like the choice, because he just had so much burst, and then in very niche situations is Flurry able to actually race him. I guess the other punish was also, say, Gallocron for armor gain, but I think when your hand is Orglave's glaive bound, sinking that much damage into minions is asking for trouble.
I can see your point. It is just the real weakness of Rogue at the moment. But even with Rogue having real weaknesses, that does mean, in my opinion, the two weakest classes for each player in the Rogue and the Druid have taken a win. Maybe the Druid wasn't so weak in this particular series up against the Rogue and the Mage. But it does mean that we are left with the more standard classes, at least. The only slightly funky bring here still being that Highlander Mage from Flurry, which, based on the stats that we saw, Gia, a 6-game sample size is looking very good for the Mage.
5 out of 6 in round robin of GM. Has Mage won against Zoo, and we already saw from Posesi mulliganing away Blazing Battle Mage, which is one of the best 1-drops, if not the best, across all of the aggressive decks in the game. That's because Posesi is aware that these small minions on their own don't get the job done versus Mage. One Reno can blow away that board. So he is looking for the power combo. Scrap Imp into a bunch of things, or an activator for this hand if they're done.
He is, but at the same time, G, he's not tapping very aggressively here. We're just seeing him curve out, destroying his own Fiendish Servant there. Would you have preferred a line where he does tap to find those combo cards? Or are you okay with the more aggressive classic Zoo approach?
I think that the particular combination of 1 into 2 curve that Posesi had gives him the license to go for this. It's Fiendish Servant and then Evil Genius to immediately get the Death Rattle and put lackeys into your hand. I think that's actually more pressure on average than Zoo is able to do without Scrap Imp, and I can get behind it. But I do expect him to be tapping fairly soon.
And next turn, he can even turn this Stone Tusk Boar into a playable minion with the Witchy Lackey as well. Whew.
Imagine thinking Stone Tusk 4 isn't playable. It's in 2 different decks in this meta.
To be fair, you do actually have me there. I take it back. And there we go, as you predicted. The tap coming down, trying to find those discard effects for Hand of Gul'dan. He's got the full suite of them, even though I'm seeing a lot of lists starting to cut one of the expired merchants or one of the Nightshade Matrons or Soulfires or whatever. So he should be able to find it fairly soon.
Draw of the Sinister Deal, of course, reminded me that Posesi also has Dark Ferroticon. So I guess that's another reason for wanting to... Oh, okay! Not important. That is a big draw.
That is what we were looking for here for Posesi. All of a sudden, with the Imp as well, this game goes into overdrive now, Gia.
It really does. Posesi can take this trade if he wants to. This is a turn before coin into the removal. Big removal from Flurry is available. Not that he would really feel good about playing Reno into this board. But I guess there is a particular punish, Arcane Breath. Possesi will get the knowledge that there's no dragon in hand for Flurry, though.
Yeah, it's a very specific punish, and given that he's already seen the Ray of Frost, which would be a good way to kill it off, I like taking this trade there. Because the only way to kill off both of his minions there would be like Zephyrus into Cleave, and if that happens, brilliant.
How are you liking double Scrap Imp with the Sinister deal? I guess deal goes first. But this looks like a lot of minions to be buffing.
Gia, we simp for the Imp. This looks insane. I mean, if you want to just keep the lackeys roll, or get the hand full of minions, just playing the Sinister deal here doesn't look too awful.
I love it.
You are, of
Still
course, going to
gets
have
to tap next turn.
yes, of course. He does, of course, have to think, however, what is his next turn going to be? Is he just going to tap pass and not develop any minions? Or does he want to keep the pressure rolling a little bit more than that?
I think that in most cases versus Mage, it's actually fine to take a step back in this mid-game where they want to be playing reactive minions. We can already see 2 of them from Flurry's hand. Defensive options like Rusted Raider and Cartooth Defender. The punish would be, I think, exactly Dragoncaster into Power of Creation, or I suppose an early Solarian coined out as the proactive plays for Mage. But in many instances, they're not putting very much pressure on the board that I feel that Posesi can just wait to milk the full value out of this hand.
That is very fair enough, Gia. And although it's easy to laugh at and call it a meme, Solarian Prime there was one of the best cards he could possibly draw. It gives him not a guaranteed answer to a big board by any stretch of the imagination, but something powerful to do in response to it, at least.
Right. And I think the way Flurry's hand works out is pretty perfect for him. He knows that the big bombs are coming next turn, but he has the Solarian for the response. He can just play his Cartooth Defender now to have a minion on board in case Solarian doesn't necessarily clear everything. And then he just curves into Deep Freeze and then coin Reno. I'm kind of surprised to see the Arcane Intellect here.
As am I. I also like the look of the Cartooth Defender there, because Solarian Prime is so far from a guaranteed board clear, especially against a bunch of minions that have +4 health from what they are supposed to start with.
Look at this shield bearer, Dark.
I'm looking. And I'm not liking what I'm seeing here.
The size of a curator.
What do you even do here? Nightshade Matron? Yes.
Sure. Yeah, it discards the only unbuffed minion in the hand.
Yeah.
And I'm also looking at prioritizing not board locking for Posesi here, because age-old interaction between Mage and aggressive Warlocks is that Freeze Mage is favored against Zoo because they just lock your board and then deal damage to face, and then suddenly when you're tapping too much, you just get within range of lethal. It's not so much burst included in Reno Mage these days compared to Freeze Mage, but it's a similar interaction.
Yeah, exactly. It just gives you the time to hit amazing Reno, and at that point you're pretty favored, even if you're not just killing your opponent. The other obvious thing that Posesi needs to be afraid of here is the fact that he knows that this is a Flame Ward.
Right.
And so he's just going to proc it right now with as few minions in play as possible.
I'm actually a bit surprised by that, because he could have done it with fewer minions if he used the Nightshade Matron to kill and then Don't Tusk Board to proc. But maybe he doesn't actually want to be discarding the Expired Merchant, because the way these two minions interplay is that if one discards the other, he doesn't have an activator for the second half of the gun. But here we go.
It's time for the Prime.
Wow, that's a great
Frost
one
over
already.
the board lock is the first card that Solarian casts.
Oh my god! Yara, what do you mean Solarian isn't guaranteed to clear a board?
I'm sorry for ever doubting you, Solarian. Oh my bloomin' goodness. This card is insane. Frost Nova and Flame Strike, hello.
Suddenly makes you wonder why it is the Scrap Imp that's getting nerfed. No, I completely understand, but wow, Solarian drawn so early.
Yeah.
It's just such a huge swing.
This is looking premium now for Flurry. Both scrap imps have been used, so even if the charge minions from Posesi can be found in,
You were just a
well, I guess exactly
Brightwing!
the second boar, it doesn't even matter.
Okay. I
Wait.
guess it doesn't matter what he takes
Oh,
because he was gonna play the matron, but I was looking at Malagos Soulfire. At the very least, it would have been cooler to discard Malagos than Brightwing, right? Unless you're a big Brightwing hater, which, to be fair, I kinda am.
Well, it's not over yet for Posesi. There is still one last really annoying board that Flurry needs to find an answer for. Thankfully, however, he has the perfect answer in the amazing Reno on the following turn. Just got to survive here, which I think he is absolutely guaranteed to do.
We're looking at Posesi's late game, though. It's not completely dry. The reason he's running Dark Pharaoh Tikan, I don't think there's a Zephyrus in this list, whereas we have seen it from other players also running Tikan.
Yeah.
So it is limited late game options, but not all is lost. There is
Great point.
Tikan.
Very, very good point. And I think for me, the real crucial turn to go back to is that turn where he didn't play the Nightshade Matron, because I can see what he's going for in holding onto the expired merchant in case he draws his hand of Gul'dan. But I think just board locking himself and not getting that much pressure onto the board as he could have done while playing fewer minions would have put him in a much better spot. Because now, all of a sudden, all the pressure just poof disappears.
I really like your point. I still think that no matter what board Posesi built, it would get absolutely destroyed by the quality of that Solarium,
Fair
but
enough.
maybe could have given him a couple more percentage points. As it stands, though, no second hand available, and the Tikan is towards the bottom of the deck. I think he only has 2 more Lackey generating cards left anyway. Evil Genius and the other Sinister Deal. Wow! Silencing the death
Get him,
rattle
Reno.
minion for good. Oh man.
And at this point, you can just kind of start doing whatever you want, really, as Flurry. As long as you're not letting yourself be blown out of the game by some surprise lethal, it's fine.
Well, healing minion and an armor gain minion, so he's not getting
Technically,
burst
yeah.
out.
And there it is. Posesi knows that the jig is up, throws it down. He is thinking back there again. Was there anything I could have done? Maybe, like you said, the play that I suggested does just get blown out by Nightshade by the Solarian Prime. Probably, yes, that game was just slipping away from him there at that point. But for Flurry on the other side, it was still just an interesting decision at all to go for the Solarian Prime over Coin Pilgrim. But it worked out great for him, leaving himself the option of Reno on 9.
Yeah, I think the Solarian was pretty much a foregone conclusion. I feel that the card pretty consistently can deal with opposing boards. It was just the use of Arcane Intellect over Cartooth Defender that I wasn't entirely sure of. In any case, that does mean that the Zoo win rate versus Mage sinks below 16% now. That's crazy.
Unwinnable matchup. Eat your heart out, Freeze Mage versus Control Warrior. We have a new, most infamously unfavored matchup of all time.
With the
But now
hugest
Flurry-
sample size ever.
Exactly, 7 games. Like, what were you saying? The scientific sample size is, if it's more than 3, it's good with me. At least that's what I would say. But Flurry, the Demon Hunter as the last remaining deck, Zoo and the Demon Hunter mirror. I would say, despite what our sample size was saying at the start, I am a fan of the Demon Hunter in this matchup versus the Zoo.
Definitely. The way that Demon Hunter's tools work are just so efficient in terms of tempo that it kind of shuts off one of the lines Zoo can go for, which is just playing a bunch of 1-drops because those are good in the early game. It means that Zoo needs to default to their Scrap and Magic Carpet game plan, which oftentimes doesn't even come together, let alone come on time against the Demon Hunter pressure.
I was about to say the stupidest thing I've ever said in my life, Gia. Can you guess what it was the player was going to suggest?
Og Merchant?
Fiendish Servant coin Org Merchant to give it Divine Shield. You underestimate my stupidity, Gia.
I see. Well, you end up with a 4-1 Og Merchant.
Oh! Imagine.
Nutty. Interesting pick here for Flurry. I'm looking at the Battle Fiend just to make his turn 4. 3-drop plus 1-drop, but then the quality of the 5-drops make it really difficult to pass up.
Yeah,
Especially since he's got Twin Slice with the Glaive Bound.
That's right. Huge fan of this pick. I think he went for the Warglaives in the end. Yeah, because it just gives you such a great clear onto the board versus Zoo if you need to. But also, you can just go for damage if that's your approach as well.
Pretty premium Lackey to get for Posesi. He has a tenuous grip on the board. I hesitate to say that a 2-1 and a 1-1 is swinging the board versus Demon Hunter. But it'll do for now.
Yeah, the main point is that the annoying nature of the Fiendish Servant is that no matter what happens, the Satyr Overseer would be able to be cleared.
True enough. So does that then mean that Flurry goes for a freeze this turn? And then goes Overseer, Hero Power on the next, and then trades off whatever gets buffed, assuming that another minion is played at all for Posesi.
I guess if only one minion is being played, then it does work out that way. But we can clearly see Posesi has one heck of a play available
Oh yeah.
with the Carpet Coin Org Merchant.
And what is the Aug Merchant targeting this time, Dara?
The carpet?
Yes! Woohoo!
Hey, there we
The
go.
only correct answer. Every other target is disastrous.
Ooh.
Okay. I feel
Doesn't
that
change things around?
I feel that the Imp is not actually gonna get played this game. The way
Oh
that
my
Posesi's
God.
been going for his game plan, it seems like just the Mitra not pretty powerful for next turn.
Imp is bait. You heard it here first, guys.
Of course, it depends on what Flurry chooses to develop. The Matron doesn't line up all that nicely against Satyr Overseer, whereas rushing another Aug Merchant could get the job done. But if the play is going to be rush a 1-drop plus Scrap Imp, the Scrap Imp is not buffing very much.
For me on this turn, Gia, I think that we completely desert the Satyr Overseer plan at the moment because this just allows it to be so easily chewed up on the following turn by whatever is played by Posesi. I was looking a little bit more closely at Spectral Sight on that turn, Hero Power off the Divine Shield, and then set up for Warglaives to just take out everything on the following turn, and then maybe Satyr Overseer after that to try and summon a few tutus.
Yeah, I was looking at that as well. This board looks far too fragile, and Posesi has two options to deal with it. First one that jumped out at me is just the Nightshade Matron develop a 5-3 after it trades down into the 2-2 and a 3-5 Carpet. Nothing to scoff at. Maybe that is what Flurry was setting up for, just a way to remove the Divine Shield on this Carpet, so then he could just use the Warglaives plus Twin Slices to deal with it. But we already see Posesi going for option number 2, which is play all 3 of the rest of the cards, develops a nice sturdy board, gets the Scrap Imp online, even if it just buffs, probably good enough for this board state.
Do you think it's Imp over tap?
I wonder. Almost out of time.
That is a tough question. I tend to feel
I'm
that
very
the
tempted by
earlier
it. As soon as you hit Skull of Gul'dan as the high roll, you are just turboing into the lead.
Sound of cooldown would be absolutely huge there. And the tap allows Posesi to deviate here. It's actually a little bit worse into the Warglaives, not
it
to
is.
give the Carpet Divine Shield.
I was surprised to see that there. It obviously puts 2 taunts in play, you know, as you say. And he didn't know that there was the second Twin Slice, of course, which is, I guess, the reasoning behind Posesi's play here.
Right.
As if it wasn't there, we would have had to have seen another attack in, and thus a full destruction of the Warglaives. But it was close.
Be a turning point now for Posesi. I mean, he does know that the second slice is in hand, so I don't think actually an option there. Could just be immediately cleared by Flurry. Keeps tapping, hoping to find that hand of Gul'dan, but Flurry is searching for another body part of Gul'dan of his own, the skull.
Thanks, Gia.
And with a Metamorphosis, maybe he won't even need to go for the skull plan. I'm just seeing a lot of damage coming together to the face, and the more that Posesi taps, the closer Flurry will just get to lethal.
Yeah, the swing with the weapon here is not a foregone conclusion. You do kind of want to hold on to it to take out the minions, but buffing the Imp, you're dominating the board anyway. I do like just trying to close out the game sooner rather than later, because there's also the potential now that turn 6 is rolling around that we could just see Dark Pharaoh to Khan come down, and the 4/4s could lock out the game if Flurry doesn't play aggressively enough.
This is so awkward now for Posesi because he really wants to play the Matron to deal with the 2/4, but that is going to discard essentially 2 cards from the hand, less that will be buffed by the Scrap Imp.
Yeah, he was
He's
really,
going to bite the bullet.
really hoping for one of the spells to go there.
So for Flurry, the Metamorphosis is getting played. It's just a question of whether it's hitting the Matron or the face.
Demons?
So if you go face, you are absolutely conceding board control completely. But are you doing that anyway, whether you hit it or not? A Scrap Imp goes off, your board is pretty weak to, at best, I would say. And therefore I really like the play of just going full face here.
Yeah, very good point. We did see a Carpet and a fair amount of taunts, but Posesi's nearly halfway through his deck, so it's not unlikely that we're going to see at least another Carpet or another set of taunts, all of which would kind of negate the damage Flurry would get by getting rid of the Matron, theoretically. Goblin Lackey?
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me to rush in the 4/3 Orc Merchant.
Right. He can also immediately eat the Lackey with his Evil Genius.
Great. Unless, of course, he's really afraid of any damage coming from face at all and therefore tries to set up a Titanic in order to protect himself.
Right. I mean, he knows what the last card is. It's Second Slice.
True. Yep.
But there's another 5 damage from the Metamorphosis showing, so I don't mind taking the defensive approach here. He got to rush anyway.
Yeah, it's a very easy full board clear now.
I do think that some of this damage has to go face, though, because Posesi has to set up the 2-turn.
Ooh. Yeah, maybe you're just right.
Yeah. So if the Matron goes face, he goes down to 16. I think Posesi definitely has about that much damage showing on board with the Soulfire in hand to supplement. I like this so much from Posesi. The breakpoint just isn't there. Yeah. Hey.
Frozen Shadow Weaver just doesn't do it, does it?
No, it doesn't get there. If Flurry freezes the 4/3, shoots
Well, the 5/3.
Right.
Oh, shoots off the 5/3, okay.
Yeah. Maybe he shoots off the 3/5, freezes the 5/3, and then trades off Evil Genius. Oh my gosh, that keeps him alive versus a Soulfire, but dead to Soulfire plus Goblin Lackey. And the play just sounds terrible anyway. I don't think Flurry can afford to be playing around all of that burst from Posesi. He's got to find a way for lethal of himself. So I think that we're just going to see him freeze off the 5/3 and ship everything else to face.
Oh, it feels beyond awful. But,
Time grows short.
In terms of damage breakpoints, I think that even if you trade off one minion, you're dead to Soulfire. So I'm not sure what the one trade accomplishes, but in any case, Posesi's got this on lockdown in such a tenuous game, my gosh.
very, very close indeed. And weirdly enough, I think I actually just realized upon counting that Flurry had a very real out on that turn that Posesi didn't play around of Kayn for exact lethal, which maybe is another consideration because he could have gone Metamorphosis hero power, regular hero power, Twin Slice, whereas if Posesi had traded his Stone Tusk Boar, he might have been able to survive against Kayn on the final turn. So maybe it was a little bit too aggressive there from Posesi at the end. He should have shipped the Matron face and traded away the Boar instead.
Yeah, and you still would have had the lethal for next turn, right? Especially with Soulfire in hand.
I think so.
Yeah. Maybe a slight optimization could have been made there. But to be fair to Posesi, he did know that there was just the second slice in hand and whatever else would just be coming off the top. In any case, I like that he did ship the Matron face at all. I think it is great recognition that the tides have turned by that point in the game. And we were already kind of counting him out by the time that the second imp hardly got anything to buff, but just the right timing on the Matron still allowed him to take that.
It was just showcasing that you can still play this Zoo deck in a more classical way, where you are just tempoing onto the board. You don't have to rely on Hand of Gul'dan and Scrap him in order to take the win.
But we are just gonna finish the series on a Demon Hunter mirror. I'm used to seeing this at the beginning rather than at the end, but I guess you could shift the orders around because this is Conquest. And on the play already with the Battle Fiend, the rest of the hand is looking clunky. But the Shadow Weaver could present a very annoying situation for Flurry because he's looking to go Umbra Wing into Satyr Overseer.
Mm-hmm.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
I think this is fine from Flurry. It just, in most situations, either takes a card from Posesi to be cleared or 1-for-1s with the Battle Fiend. And even if the Battle Fiend survives, he's got Umbra Wing. And if he wants to, coin Hero Power for the following turn.
Yeah, I mean, that's just still sets out a very smooth curve from where I'm sat.
Mm-hmm.
I probably still prefer that to the Chaos Strike, because it develops the 1/1s and also sets up for the Satyr Overseer on the following turn.
Yeah, very clean.
But then, Gia, we've seen quite a few times now that even in the face of the quote-unquote dream hand, where you go 1-drop Umberwing Satyr Overseer, that can be completely unraveled on its own by a Frozen Shadow Weaver, which Posesi does have. So I would call him far from out of this game.
Oh, I completely agree. The Shadow Weaver was kind of a godsend for Posesi because otherwise his mid-game was looking to get completely overrun by what Flurry has. But Flurry, I think it's fine for him to still go for this, even knowing that there are 2 Shadow Weavers in the deck for Posesi, because he's still got Sigil Runner for a play next turn, even if his face is frozen.
Is it cold in the shadow?
Again, we see it time and time again. Shadow Weaver face, it's always where that ice is pointed.
So aggressive that even your defensive mechanics are pointed towards the face. Sigil Runner looking like the only option here.
Yeah. Could potentially just play Chaos Strike to draw a card as well if he thinks his mana is all spoken for the next few turns.
Okay.
Or just play it out here.
Wow. Okay, I guess what this does is that it requires Posesi to remove the Satyr
Yep.
with a card in hand. Otherwise, he gives up the pressure that he spent the whole turn developing. There are hefty punishes for it, but given that Flurry just has a 4-5 curve, I'm not entirely opposed.
And
That's
the punish
good news that, yeah.
is not there for Posesi. He is pulling pretty far behind. To be fair, though, he does have the comeback tools that you want in the mid-game. Warglaives of Azzinoth can take out any wide boards. This Kane is a little bit more scary because he's going to have to take 6 damage if he wants to be able to take it out on this turn. But Skull, Glavebound, all this stuff can set up for a swing back onto the board.
It really can. I wonder if Posesi can get away with not killing Kane this turn, save some charges for the Overseer.
Demons? Demons.
But if you're playing Overseer next turn, it means you're not playing Skull or Glavebound.
Exactly.
Yeah, looks like he does have to kill it.
It feels truly awful. And now for Flurry, Metamorphosis in hand, Chaos Strike in hand becomes pretty premium already. He just goes for the throat.
Yeah, probably not this turn because the Metamorphosis would still take 3 turns to get the full
yeah.
10 damage off if you play it on 5 mana. So I like the development now and the burst later.
Oh, it just works out so well. Metamorphosis sets up, if not guaranteed lethal, it is very likely to do so in the next couple of turns.
Oh man, Posesi probably can't get away with a Skull here. Yep, he's just hoping to draw Twin Slices or I-Beam from this. That's a good one too.
It's a good card.
Yeah.
Can potentially protect his Altruist for the following turn.
I think this is close to the best Posesi could have asked for. It's just more development. He clears the board without having to take any face damage. But he's far from being able to race Flurry is his main problem.
And all of a sudden, Flurry is actually presented with a difficult choice, if you can imagine here at this point in the game.
Yep.
Does the Metamorphosis have to trade?
Ooh.
Maybe that makes it easier.
Yeah, I would have said it probably does have to trade, just because Altruist is so threatening with the amount of base damage it can deal. But now with the Glaive Bound, Flurry can clear off 2 minions and also develop a 6/4.
It doesn't set up Skull for the following turn, though, Gia.
Kind of a big deal, but I think leaving an Altruist is a bigger deal. Oh, okay, so the argument is Metamorphosis versus that, so you can play the Skull.
Right. Well, the thinking, of course, as well, is that if you just go Metamorphosis face on this turn, is there actually any way that your opponent can get out of range? Because they're unlikely to kill you. They would have to get a lot of damage,
True.
which they clearly haven't represented that they have a bunch of cheap cards.
There's also the matter of I-Beam.
One I-Beam
I guess,
you can beat,
yeah,
though.
yeah, you're right, because the hero power refreshes to the normal
Yep.
attack by that point, and then the Glaive Bound can get through. Huh. You know what? I like the sound of that. No respect for Altruist. Love it. I think this is great recognition.
Yeah, so does Flurry. It has to be, I think, exactly double I-Beam for there to be any real chance here for Posesi.
Or the greatest skull in history.
Oh my
If
god.
we are twin slices.
Well, let's start with double twin slice, right? Because you just want to play that on this turn.
Right.
The game's either won or lost this turn.
Might as well play them both while they are guaranteed to proc Altruist.
Is this ever lethal?
I don't know, Dark. I've seen crazier things from Demon Hunter.
It's actually not that far off already.
It is really not.
Poor warlock.
Whoa!
Oh my gosh.
These are cheap. That's damage.
that is
That's
not
bad.
cheap.
No!
11, 12, 13, 14. That is playable. But I think the train ends there.
Time grows short.
I think he'll be too off lethal. Oh my gosh, that was so close.
Oh dear, if that last card was a twin strike, that was just game.
It really was. And not just Twin Slice, there would have been anything that was 3 mana or less and playable for Posesi just would have given him the game, because it would have him to get free damage off of I-Beam and the Crimson Sigil Runner.
Our enemies will fall.
That's insane.
Incredibly close there. But it does mean that in the end, Flurry does go up 3 games to 2, takes the win in the mirror. It is showing to be more and more crucial in this series and takes a well-deserved win. It does, of course, mean now that Posesi is not going up to 3-0. The only player who looks to be in with a chance to do so this week is Glory, also up at the 2-0 record, but he's still looking to be in a great spot.
Yeah, Posesi, I think not too bad for him there, especially since you're in Division A. As long as you're not in the bottom 2 of Division A, it's essentially like winning the way that the playoff did. So I think that it'll be not too stressful for Posesi, but I think a big relief for Flurry in particular.
Big relief. Yeah, he's starting to get those wins on the table, up towards that top half or top 6/8 of the bracket, or 3/4 if you want to talk like a normal person, so that he has a chance to get through to the playoffs in order to get to the global finals later on. And we can look at the rest of the schedule for today to see who else in Division A is going to be fighting for those top spots. Glory versus Kin up next, and that year is a battle of the top versus the bottom.
It really is. Glory is the other player who has a chance of going up to 3-0. The only one in Division A with a shot right now, because our 3-0 player in APAC so far is Blitzchung over in Division B. And we bring up Blitzchung at a good time because Glory's opponent is one of Blitzchung's most constant practice partners, Kin. And that whole practice group has just been leaving up War. We always found a little bit weird. I'm curious to see if Kin will stick to that strategy for this series.
And it's been working great for Blitzchung Less so for Kin, though, it's got to be said. I think overall, that's not so much due to his play overall. It's only 2 series so far. It's a very small sample size from what we've seen. And they're changing up this strategy this week anyway with taking the Warrior. The one thing I'm curious about, like you said, is whether they ban the Warrior. But again, in terms of the playstyle, I've been very, very happy overall with Kin's play. He has looked like